Vampire King Alaric Nocturne had never frozen in his life. Not when blades pierced his chest. Not when kingdoms burned because of his decisions. Not even when he held his dead queen in his arms and felt her body turn cold against his immortal skin. But that night, beneath crystal chandeliers dripping with blood-red light, one small word turned him to stone. 3 years, for 3 years, his daughter had not spoken a single word. Not a cry, not a whisper. The best physicians blamed trauma. The seers blamed a curse tied to her birth. The court whispered something far worse, that she was a weak heir, a flaw in the bloodline, but Alaric knew better. Lyra was not broken. She was waiting for something or someone. The banquet hall shimmered with false peace. Nobles in dark velvet and silver embroidery laughed softly, sipping blood wine from crystal glasses. Immortal alliances were being renewed. Power was trading hands in quiet conversations, and weaving between them like a ghost was a human waitress, thin, exhausted, new to the palace. Alina kept her eyes down and her tray steady. She had been warned not to look at the king, not to breathe too loudly near the throne. This job was survival, nothing more. She needed the money. She needed to last 1 week, just 1 week. She did not know her life was about to split in half. As she stepped closer to the royal table, Lyra sat still beside her father, pale silver hair, quiet eyes, a small silver rabbit toy resting in her lap. Alina bent slightly to place a goblet down. That was when the rabbit slipped from Lyra's fingers and hit the marble floor. The sound was tiny, but the silence that followed was enormous. Every noble turned. Lyra did not cry, she did not move toward the toy, she lifted her head slowly, and she looked at Alina, not like a stranger, not like a servant, but like recognition, like relief. Alina felt something strange in her chest, a pull, a warmth. Her hands trembled slightly as she bent to pick up the rabbit. The moment her fingers touched it, her body reacted in a way she could not explain. A phantom ache beneath her ribs, a sharp pressure in her chest. Milk let down pain, though she had never had a child. She swallowed hard, confused. Lyra's tiny finger lifted and pointed at her. 3 years of silence cracked. Mama! The word echoed through the hall like a gunshot. A goblet shattered somewhere in the distance. Someone inhaled sharply. The seer dropped her ring of obsidian beads. Alaric rose slowly from his throne. His face did not show rage, it showed something far worse, fear. Because if his daughter had just said, "Mama," there were only two possibilities. Either someone had manipulated her mind, or the woman buried in the royal crypt 3 years ago was not the truth. Alina froze, rabbit still in her hand. "Your Majesty," she whispered shakily, "I don't understand." Silence. The single word was not loud, but it froze the entire hall. Guards stepped forward instantly. Nobles leaned back. The air shifted from celebration to threat in a breath. Lyra began to crawl from her seat, not toward her father, toward Alina. "Mama," she repeated softly. Alina's vision blurred. Her arms moved without asking her mind for permission. She caught the child as Lyra reached her, and the moment their skin touched, the chandeliers flickered. A low pulse traveled through the marble floor. Ancient runes carved into the pillars glowed faintly red. The court seer gasped. "Blood recognition," she whispered. "Impossible." Alaric descended the steps from his throne with slow, controlled steps. He stopped directly in front of Alina, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. His red eyes did not burn. They searched. "Who are you?" he asked. Alina shook her head, tears forming. "I'm no one," she said honestly. "I just serve food." Lyra clung tighter to her dress, calm, smiling, peaceful in a way she had never been inside the palace. Alaric's jaw tightened. He turned slightly to his captain of guard. "She is not to be harmed," he said. "Not touched, not questioned by anyone except me." The hall erupted in murmurs. "You will come with us," he told Alina quietly. "Not as an arrest, as something else, something careful, for your protection." Because if the court believed this human had activated something tied to the royal bloodline, she would not survive the night. As guards formed a silent wall around her, Alina looked down at Lyra resting against her chest. The phantom pain in her body intensified. Not fear, not danger, recognition. And on the throne behind them, the empty seat where the queen once sat seemed to watch everything unfold. The palace doors didn't just close behind Alina and the child, they sealed like a tomb. The noise of the banquet vanished, replaced by a corridor so quiet it felt like the building itself was holding its breath. Guards moved on both sides of her in perfect formation, not rough, not gentle, just absolute. Alina tried to speak, but her throat locked. Lyra stayed pressed to her chest, warm and calm, her tiny hand gripping Alina's collar like she had found the only safe thing in a violent world. Alaric walked ahead, coat trailing like a shadow, and yet Alina could feel him watching without turning, like he could see through walls. They reached a private lift hidden behind a carved panel. The moment Alaric stepped in, the guards lowered their eyes. Not respect like humans give a king. Fear like prey gives a storm. The lift rose smoothly, silently, and when the doors opened, Alina expected a dungeon. Instead, she saw a suite that looked like a luxury prison. Gold lamps, velvet drapes, thick rugs, and one single detail that made her stomach drop. Runes carved into the doorframe, faintly glowing like the palace itself was drawing a circle around her. "This is protective custody," Alaric said, voice calm as ice. "You are not under arrest. You are under threat." Alina swallowed. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "I don't even know why she—" Lyra lifted her head at that, eyes bright, and repeated the word like it tasted right. "Mama." Alina flinched because something inside her answered. Not memory, not logic, her body. A sudden tug in her chest, like invisible strings pulled tight. The same phantom ache returned, sharper now, and her arms instinctively tightened around the child as if she had done it 1,000 times before. Alaric noticed. His gaze dropped to Alina's hands, then to Lyra's face. Then back to Alina, and his expression didn't soften, it sharpened like a blade being honed. "Put her down," he ordered gently, which was somehow more frightening than a shout. Alina hesitated. Lyra made a small, unhappy sound, clutching tighter. Alaric didn't move, but the air changed, heavier, and Alina obeyed because her bones understood command. She lowered Lyra onto the rug. The child immediately crawled back to Alina's knee and leaned against it, refusing distance. Alaric's jaw flexed once. He turned to the guards. "No one enters this floor without my voice and my blood sign," he said. "If any noble asks about her, you say she is gone. If the physician asks, you say nothing." A guard hesitated. "My king, the first advisor already." Alaric's eyes lifted and the guard stopped breathing. "I said no one." The guard bowed and left. Alina's skin prickled. She had lived around cruel men before, human men, loud men, violent men. Alaric was different. He didn't need noise to be dangerous. He just was. When the last footsteps faded, the door clicked and the runes flared once like the room locked itself. Alina backed up a step. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "If the court thinks I'm some kind of threat, why not just throw me out?" Alaric's mouth twitched, not a smile, not kindness. "Because if I throw you out, you won't make it past the stairs." Alina's stomach went cold. "They'd kill me. They'd tear you apart politely," he replied. "They would call it tradition." Lyra suddenly toddled toward Alaric, wobbling, brave as a little soldier. Alina's heart jumped, but before she could move, Lyra reached up and touched Alaric's hand. The king froze again, just for a blink. Lyra's fingers curled around his, then she looked back at Alina and frowned like something was wrong, like the picture in her head didn't match reality. "Mama," she said again. Then she tapped Alaric's hand and added a soft, confused sound, almost a question. Alaric slowly withdrew his hand as if he was afraid of breaking her. He looked at Alina with a strange mix of anger and grief. "She hasn't spoken in 3 years," he said. "Do you understand what you've done?" Alina's voice shook. "I haven't done anything, I swear. I've never seen her before tonight." Alaric stared at her like he was measuring lies by the beat of her heart. "Then why did the seal react when you touched her?" he asked. Alina blinked. "What seal?" Alaric didn't answer right away. He crossed the room to a cabinet built into the wall, opened it with a key made of black metal, and removed a small velvet box. He set it on the table and opened it. Inside lay a thin chain with a pendant shaped like a crescent crown. "This belonged to my queen," he said. The word queen came out like a wound reopening. "Seraphine Nocturne, the only person in this realm who ever spoke to me like I was not a weapon." Alina's breath caught. Lyra reached toward the pendant with both hands, fascinated. Alaric closed the lid gently. 3 years ago she died. The court mourned. The realm moved on. I did not. Alina watched him, and for the first time she saw it, not just power, but emptiness, like a man forced to keep standing while something inside him never healed. Lyra was born after, Alaric continued. She lived, but she went silent. The seers insisted her voice was stolen by grief. The physicians insisted her throat was healthy. Court insisted I accept that my heir is cursed. His gaze snapped to Alina. Then tonight you arrive, and my daughter says the only word she has ever refused to give me. Alina shook her head. I don't know why she called me that. Yes, you do, came a voice from the doorway. Alina spun. An old woman had entered without a sound, carrying a tray with a covered silver cup. Her hair was white, her back straight, her eyes sharp like knives. She didn't look at Alina first. She bowed to Alaric. My king. Alaric's face hardened. Nurse Maeve. You were not told to enter, he said. Maeve lifted her chin. I was told not to let your daughter die of hunger while you interrogate a frightened human. Her eyes slid to Alina. And I was told to watch for the seal. Alina's fingers curled. You know about it. Maeve's expression didn't change. I know more than the court wants you to know. Alaric's voice turned low. Speak carefully. Maeve placed the tray down and removed the lid from the cup. The smell hit Alina instantly, warm milk, sweet herbs, and something metallic underneath, faint but present. Lyra's attention snapped to it. She toddled over, eager. Maeve poured a small amount into a tiny cup and offered it to Lyra, who drank fast, then looked back at Alina again like she wanted Alina to approve. Alina felt another wave of phantom sensation, a soft ache in her chest, like her body was responding to a child feeding. She grabbed the table edge. What's wrong with me? She whispered. Maeve answered without pity. Your body remembers what your mind has been forced to forget. Alina's blood ran cold. Forget? Alaric stepped closer. Explain, he demanded. Maeve did not flinch. There is a court language older than this palace, a silent code used by queens and war witnesses, a way to hide truth inside ordinary gestures. She lifted the silver cup slightly. Tonight the queen mother shattered her cup on purpose. Not an accident, not clumsy. It was a coded signing. Alina's stomach turned. What does that mean? Maeve's eyes flicked to the runes around the door as if she feared the walls themselves. It meant assassination tonight. Alaric's face went blank, the way a storm goes quiet before it kills. The Queen Mother, he said. She would not. You misjudged her, Maeve said softly. You misjudged many people. Alina's breathing sped up. Why am I involved? I'm just a waitress. Maeve's gaze landed on Alina's throat, and Alina instinctively touched her own skin. Under her uniform collar, hidden since childhood, was a small locket she never opened because it never opened for her. She had found it as a girl, wedged inside a cracked floorboard in the orphan house, and it had felt like the only thing that belonged to her. Maeve's voice lowered. Because you are not just anything. Alaric followed Maeve's gaze. Show me your neck, he ordered. Alina stepped back. No, Alaric didn't move. I am not asking, he said. His tone wasn't cruel, it was law. Alina's hands shook as she reached under her collar and pulled the locket out. It was dull, old, shaped like a teardrop with a faint crown pattern scratched into the metal. Alaric's pupils narrowed. Maeve inhaled. Lyra gasped like she recognized it too. Alina tried to open it the way she had tried 100 times before. It wouldn't budge. Alaric held out his hand. Alina hesitated, then placed the locket in his palm. His fingers brushed hers, ice cold, and the moment skin met, the runes on the door flared bright red. The locket clicked, opened, like it had been waiting for his touch all this time. Alina's knees nearly gave out. Inside the locket was a tiny shard of black glass, not glass exactly, something deeper. It pulsed once like a heartbeat. Then Alina's head snapped up as a memory hit her from nowhere. A woman's voice, soft, regal, singing a lullaby in a language Alina had never learned. And yet her lips mouthed the words without permission. Lyra turned toward her instantly, eyes wide like she had been listening for that sound her whole life. Alaric stepped back, expression shattered. That lullaby, he whispered. Only Seraphine sang that. Alina's mouth trembled. "I don't know it," she said, terrified. "I swear I don't." Maeve spoke the truth like a blade. "Someone put it inside you, a memory shard, a witness lock." Alaric's voice became dangerous. "Who?" Maeve's eyes darkened. "The person closest to you, my king, the one who has been controlling the court's silence." Alina couldn't breathe. "So I'm what? A trap?" Alaric looked at her, and his next words were quieter, almost broken. "You are a key, and keys get hunted." As if the palace heard him, a soft sound came from the corridor outside, one slow footstep, then another, heavy enough to announce confidence. The runes on the door flickered. Maeve's face tightened. Lyra crawled behind Alina's legs, frightened for the first time since the banquet. Alaric's hand slid to the knife hidden under his coat. His voice turned to steel. "They found you already." The knock did not come again. It did not need to. The voice outside was calm, cultured, almost bored. "My king," it repeated softly, "if the child is unwell, I must examine her. The council grows anxious." Alina felt Lyra's fingers dig into her leg. The runes around the door were flickering now, not bright red, not protective gold, but weak, like something was draining their strength from outside. Alaric did not answer immediately. He tilted his head slightly, listening not with ears but with something deeper, something ancient. Maeve moved closer to Alina and whispered without moving her lips, "Do not speak unless he tells you. The physician smiles with his mouth, not with his soul." Alina swallowed. Physician. The word sounded safe. It did not feel safe. Alaric finally spoke, voice smooth as polished stone. "You were not summoned." Silence followed, then a light chuckle. "Forgive me, your majesty." A mother's voice returning after 3 years is not a small matter. The court requires reassurance. The court requires reassurance. The words were polite, but underneath them was pressure. Alina had lived under pressure before. It had a smell. It smelled like danger pretending to be concerned. Lyra suddenly shook her head and whispered, barely audible, "No." Alina looked down at her. The child's eyes were not scared. They were alert, watching, as if she understood something older than her small body should. Alaric stepped toward the door. The runes dimmed further. He raised his hand, not to open it, but to press his palm against the wood. The carvings glowed faintly beneath his skin. For a second, Alina saw the outline of a crown burned into his flesh, hidden power, hidden oath. "If you cross this threshold without my blood sign," Alaric said evenly, "you will die." The corridor went silent. Then the voice came again, softer now. "You are emotional tonight, my king." The words were respectful, but they cut. Emotional. Alina felt the insult even if she did not understand court politics. Kings were not allowed emotion, not publicly, not where others could use it. Alaric did not react. "Return to the lower wing," he ordered. "I will address the council at dawn." There was a pause, then footsteps retreated slowly, deliberately, not rushed, not afraid, confident. Alina exhaled shakily. "That was the villain, wasn't it?" she whispered before she could stop herself. Maeve's mouth tightened. In this palace, villain is a matter of perspective. Alaric turned from the door and faced them fully. The mask was back in place, cold, controlled, but Alina could still see the crack from earlier. "His name is Draven Corvin," Alaric said. "Royal physician, blood scholar, and my most trusted advisor." Alina blinked. "Trusted." Maeve let out a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. "Trust is currency here. It is also a weapon." Alaric ignored her tone. "Draven has served this throne longer than most nobles have been alive." He delivered Lyra. His jaw flexed. He confirmed Seraphine's death. The air shifted. Alina's skin prickled. "You think he lied?" she asked softly. Alaric did not answer that. Instead, he looked at the locket still in his hand. The shard inside pulsed faintly, as if aware of being discussed. "Memory shards are not accidental," he said slowly. "They are created with intent. Seraphine would never place one without purpose." Alina felt dizzy. "I don't remember her. I don't remember anything." "You were not meant to," Maeve replied. "Witnesses are most effective when they do not know what they carry." Lyra suddenly tugged Alina's sleeve. "Cold crown," she whispered again, clearer this time. Alaric stiffened. "What does that mean?" Alina asked. Lyra looked up at her and repeated it slower. "Cold crown." Then she pointed at Alaric, then at the locket, then at Alina's chest. It was not random, it was connection. Alina's pulse raced. Something inside her shifted, like a door unlocking. A flash hit her again, snow falling on black marble, a woman kneeling in white silk, a whisper pressed against her ear, if he becomes the cold crown, he will lose himself. Protect him. Alina gasped and staggered back. Alaric caught her before she hit the floor. His grip was strong, steady. What did you see? He demanded, not harsh but urgent. Alina's eyes filled with tears she did not understand. Snow, she breathed. And her voice. She said, protect him. The words hung heavy. Protect him. Maeve's eyes widened slightly. Alaric's expression went utterly still, not frozen, calculating. From what? He asked quietly. Alina shook her head. I don't know. Lyra began humming, the same lullaby, soft, familiar. The melody filled the room, and for a moment even the runes steadied, glowing brighter, like the palace recognized its lost sound. Alaric closed his eyes just for a second. When he opened them, something had changed. Not softness, not weakness, clarity. Draven wants you removed, he said flatly. Because if Lyra bonds to you fully, the seal activates. Alina's stomach dropped. Activate how? Maeve answered this time. A blood bond between heir and true mother cannot be undone. It overrides court declaration. It overrides succession law. Alina stared at her. True mother, I didn't give birth to her. Maeve met her gaze. Biology is not the only path to motherhood in our world. The weight of that sentence settled deep. Alaric released Alina slowly. If Draven discovers the shard has awakened, he will move faster, he said. He cannot allow the bond to complete. Alina's fear sharpened. So what do we do? Alaric looked at Lyra, then at Alina, and his next words were not a command. They were a decision. We move before he does, Maeve frowned. The council will not allow open confrontation. Then it will not be open, Alaric replied. Alina's head spun. She had walked into a shift to earn money for rent. Now she was in the center of a royal conspiracy. I didn't choose this, she whispered. Alaric's gaze met hers, steady, unreadable. Neither did I. A sudden sharp sound cracked through the room. The silver cup on the tray split down the side and spilled its contents across the floor without being touched. The liquid hissed as it hit the rune-etched rug. Maeve swore under her breath. He's testing the barrier, she said. Alina's heart pounded. From outside, from everywhere, Alaric answered. The runes flickered violently, now light stuttering. Lyra began to cry, not loud but urgent. Alina dropped to her knees and pulled her close. The moment she did, the locket burned hot against her skin. The shard inside glowed brighter. The runes steadied again, as if responding to her touch. Alaric noticed instantly. His eyes widened just a fraction. It's not just the shard, he murmured. It's you. Alina looked up at him, terrified. What does that mean? He stepped closer, voice low. It means the palace recognizes you. Before she could process that, the door handle twisted sharply. Once, twice, then stopped. A voice whispered through the wood, not Draven this time. Younger, male, familiar to Alaric. Brother, it called gently. Open the door, we need to talk. Alaric's face changed. Not anger, not shock, betrayal. Maeve inhaled sharply. No, she breathed. Alina's stomach sank. That's not the physician, is it? Alaric's jaw tightened. No, he said quietly. That is my brother. Lyra lifted her head and whispered a new word, softer than before but heavy with meaning. Lie. The crack in the door did not splinter outward, it darkened. Thin black veins crawled through the carved wood like living ink, spreading from the handle to the runes, swallowing their glow. Alina felt the air thin, like the room itself was holding its breath. Lyra pressed closer to her chest. Lie, the child whispered again, and this time it was not just a word, it was warning. Alaric stepped forward slowly, not rushed, not panicked, but there was something in his posture Alina had not seen before. Not royal control, not grief, this was betrayal settling into bone. Step back, he told Alina quietly. She obeyed without thinking. Maeve moved beside her, pulling a small silver blade from her sleeve. The door handle twisted again, then stopped. A soft laugh echoed through the wood. Brother, the voice said, smooth and familiar. Must we really break furniture? It is such a bother to repair. The black veins pulsed brighter. The runes flickered weakly. Alaric's hand lifted, palm facing the door. For a second his veins glowed silver under his skin. The dark lines recoiled slightly, hissing like something alive. You were always impatient, Alaric said calmly, even as a child. Silence. Then the voice answered, no longer pretending politeness. And you were always blind. The final rune went out. The door exploded inward in a storm of splinters and smoke. Alina flinched, shielding Lyra. When the smoke cleared, a tall figure stood in the doorway, not dressed like a court advisor. Not like a scholar, armor black as oil. A silver crest over the chest, identical to Alaric but cracked down the center. His face was almost the same sharp jaw, same pale skin, but where Alaric's eyes were controlled storms, this man were burning embers. "Welcome," the stranger said, stepping inside, "to the truth." Alina understood instantly. This was not just a brother. This was rivalry shaped into flesh. "Leave," Alaric ordered, voice flat. The man smiled faintly. "Think this is about territory?" He glanced at Alina, then at Lyra. His gaze lingered there, calculating. "No, this is about inheritance." Lyra's small fingers tightened in Alina's dress. The locket burned hot again. The man noticed. His eyes narrowed. "Ah," he murmured, "so it is true." Alaric moved in front of them instantly, shielding without looking. "Do not," he warned softly. The brother tilted his head. "You truly did not know, did you?" He laughed under his breath. 3 years, Alaric. 3 years of mourning, a lie. Alina's heart pounded. "What lie?" she demanded before she could stop herself. Both men looked at her at the same time. The brother's smile widened. "The queen did not die because of illness," he said casually. "She died because she chose to." The words struck like ice water. Alaric's expression did not change, but something inside him shifted. Alina felt it. "Explain," Alaric said quietly. The brother shrugged. "Seraphine saw what was coming. The council wanted control. They wanted Lyra shaped into a puppet heir. They needed you weakened." His gaze sharpened. "So she weakened you?" Alina shook her head. "No, she loved him." The brother's eyes flicked to her, amused. "Love," he repeated softly, "is the easiest tool in the world." Lyra began to cry, not loud but wrong. The sound made Alina's chest ache. The locket flared brighter. A sudden pulse of energy rolled through the room, pushing dust and smoke outward. The brother stepped back instinctively. "There it is," he breathed. "The shard." Alaric's eyes snapped to him. "You knew." "Of course I knew," the brother replied. "I was the one who warned the council." Alina's stomach dropped. "You wanted her dead," she whispered. He smiled thinly. "I wanted stability," Maeve hissed under her breath. "You wanted the throne," the brother did not deny it. "Lyra must be pure," he said calmly. "No human contamination, no false bonds." His eyes burned into Alina. "You are in error." Alaric's voice turned lethal. "She is under my protection." The brother stepped closer. "And that is precisely why she must be removed." Alina felt something inside her snap. Fear shifted into something else. "Why?" she demanded, standing despite her shaking legs. "Why am I a threat?" The brother looked almost bored. "Because if the bond completes, Lyra will not be molded by council law. She will choose." He glanced at Alaric. "And a choosing heir is chaos." The word echoed in Alina's mind. Choose, that was the word that had changed her life before. Lyra suddenly stopped crying. She looked at the brother with eerie calm and whispered, "No crown for you." The room went still. The brother's smile faltered. Just for a second, Alaric noticed. Alina noticed. "Interesting," the brother murmured. "The shard speaks early." He lifted his hand slowly. Shadows gathered at his fingertips. Not dramatic, not loud, just deadly. Alaric moved before Alina could blink. He caught his brother's wrist midair. The shadows shattered into sparks. The two stood inches apart now, identical power clashing silently. "Leave," Alaric said again, but this time it was not a request. The brother leaned closer, voice low enough only they could hear. "If she lives," he whispered, glancing at Alina, "the truth will surface. And when it does, the council will not just question me, they will question you." Alaric did not flinch. "Let them." The brother's expression hardened. "You always did prefer emotion over strategy." Pulled his hand free sharply. The shadows around him thickened. "I will give you one night," he said coldly. "At dawn the council will convene. If the girl remains in this palace, she will be tried." Alina felt her knees weaken. "Tried for what? Existing. And if she is gone?" Alaric asked. The brother smiled faintly. "Then perhaps this was only a misunderstanding." He stepped backward into the hallway. The darkness swallowed him slowly, like ink dissolving into water. The doorframe remained broken. The air remained tense, but he was gone. Silence returned, but it was heavier now. Alina looked at Alaric. "What happens at dawn?" she whispered. Alaric did not answer immediately. He looked at Lyra instead. The child's small hand rested against Alina's collarbone over the locket. The shard pulsed softly, steady now, not frantic, not scared. At dawn, Alaric said finally, voice calm but steel beneath it, they will demand proof. Alina swallowed. Proof of what? His eyes met hers fully. That you are not the queen reborn. Her breath caught. Maeve stepped forward slowly. And if the shard reveals something else, she asked quietly. Alaric did not look away from Alina. Then the throne will not survive the morning. Dawn did not rise gently over Nocton Palace. It arrived like judgment. Gray light bled through the tall windows of the high council chamber, touching marble floors that had witnessed coronations, betrayals, and executions for over 600 years. Alina stood at the center of that chamber, wearing the same simple servant dress she had worn the night before. No crown, no silk, no protection except the silver locket resting against her heart. Lyra sat beside the throne in a carved chair too large for her small body, her silver rabbit clutched tight. Alaric stood behind her like a shadow made of steel. He did not sit. He did not blink. He did not look tired. But Alina knew something inside him had not slept. The chamber filled slowly. Nobles in dark velvet, elders in bone-white cloaks, seers with inked eyes. Every face carried curiosity sharpened into suspicion. At the highest step of the chamber, the brother stood already, hands clasped behind his back as if this trial were his personal theater. The eldest counselor raised a thin hand. "We convene under blood law," she announced. The child spoke the forbidden bond. The human claims no memory of the queen. The king protects her regardless. We seek truth. Alina swallowed. Truth. That word again. The brother stepped forward smoothly. "Your Majesty," he said politely, bowing toward Alaric, "no one questions your grief, but grief cannot rewrite law. If this human carries a shard of the Queen's memory, it must be extracted. If she is impersonation, she must be erased. The air must remain uncontaminated." Lyra frowned at that word. "Not dirty," she whispered softly. Alaric's jaw tightened. The eldest counselor nodded. "The oath seal will decide," she gestured. Two guards brought forward a stone pedestal carved with ancient runes. At its center lay a shallow bowl shaped like a crown. "Alina," the elder said calmly, "place your hand in the seal." Maeve moved closer to Alina. "If it rejects you, step back immediately," she murmured. "And if it does," Alina whispered. Maeve didn't answer. Alina stepped forward. Her legs felt like ice, but her hands did not shake. She removed the locket slowly. The chamber seemed to lean toward her. When she placed her palm over the bowl, the metal touched skin. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the runes ignited. Silver light flooded the bowl, rising like mist around her wrist. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The light did not burn. It wrapped gently around her hand like something recognizing home. The eldest counselor stood abruptly. "Impossible," she breathed. The brother's face lost color. Alina felt warmth flood through her veins. Not pain, not fear, memory, not clear images, but emotion. A woman laughing softly, a lullaby half-hummed, jasmine in the wind. She staggered slightly. Lyra suddenly stood from her chair. "Mama," she said clearly. The chamber froze. The brother stepped forward sharply. "Manipulation," he snapped. "This is trickery. Memory shards can be forged." Alaric's voice cut through the chaos. "No one forges Seraphine." The light shifted suddenly. The silver glow turned deeper, almost violet. The bowl began to hum. Alina gasped as a voice whispered inside her mind. Not words at first, just feeling, urgency, protection. Then the words formed. "Do not trust the shadow beside you." Her eyes snapped open. The light shot outward in a pulse that forced half the council backward. When it settled, the runes glowed steady, accepting. The elder's voice trembled. "The seal recognizes her." The brother moved closer, face pale with fury. "Recognition does not equal legitimacy." Alina pulled her hand back slowly. The glow faded, but warmth remained in her skin. Alaric stepped down from the throne platform, every movement deliberate. "The seal has spoken," he said quietly. "No," the brother replied, stepping between Alaric and Alina. "The seal awakened because it sensed vulnerability. If this bond completes, she will gain influence over the heir." "I do not want influence," Alina said firmly. Her voice did not shake. "I want her safe." The chamber murmured. The brother's eyes flicked to Lyra. "Safety is control," he said softly, "and control belongs to blood." Lyra walked down the steps before anyone could stop her. Her small boots echoed loudly in the silent hall. She stopped in front of Alina and placed her tiny hand over the locket. The locket flared again. A second pulse moved through the room, not violent this time, clear, focused. And suddenly, everyone saw it. Not with eyes, with memory. A flash. Seraphine standing in this very chamber, pale but determined, whispering to someone unseen, pressing the locket into another woman's hand, saying softly, "If they silence me, let her speak." The vision vanished. Alina collapsed to her knees, breath stolen from her lungs. The chamber erupted. She was warned. The queen anticipated betrayal. The bond was deliberate. The brother staggered back slightly. Alaric did not move to help Alina immediately. He stared at his brother with something colder than anger. "You knew," Alaric said softly. The brother's voice cracked. "She was unstable, she threatened the order." "She threatened you," Alaric corrected. Silence. The elder counselor stepped forward slowly. "Prince Veyron," she said carefully, "did you alter the queen's medical records?" Veyron did not answer. "Did you suppress the child's voice through seer binding?" His silence became confession. Lyra looked confused. "Uncle Mean," she said quietly. Alina pushed herself upright slowly. Her body trembled, but her voice was clear. "You tried to erase me before I even knew I existed," she said. Veyron's mask cracked fully. "You are nothing," he spat. "A human mistake." The seal bowl suddenly cracked down the center with a loud snap. Everyone turned. The crack glowed with bright violet light. The elder seer gasped. "The bond is not partial," she whispered. "It is permanent." Alaric finally moved. He stepped in front of Alina fully, facing his brother. "You have until sunset," he said calmly, "to leave this palace." The chamber gasped. "You would exile blood," the elder counselor demanded. Alaric did not blink. "I would exile poison." Veyron laughed suddenly, wild and sharp. "You think exile ends this?" he asked quietly. "If she remains, the other courts will sense it. They will not allow a human-bonded heir." Alaric's voice lowered dangerously. "Then let them come." Alina looked up at him, heart pounding. This was no longer private betrayal. This was war. Veyron's eyes met hers one last time. "You have no idea what crown you stepped into," he whispered. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, cloak trailing behind him like smoke. The council remained frozen. The elder cleared her throat slowly. "The seal has recognized the bond. Under ancient law, the human stands under royal protection." Alina exhaled slowly, but she did not feel safe. Because as Veyron's footsteps faded down the hall, Lyra whispered something so quiet only Alina heard it. "He not alone." Alina's stomach turned cold. Because if the prince was not alone, then the trial was never the real danger. War does not begin with armies. It begins with whispers. By nightfall the palace felt different, not loud, not chaotic, just tense. Servants moved quicker. Guards doubled at every corridor. Shadows seemed thicker in corners where they should not exist. Alina stood on the balcony outside Lyra's chamber, the cold wind brushing her face, trying to understand how her life had shifted from pouring wine at tables to standing at the center of a royal fracture. Behind her, Lyra slept peacefully for the first time in years. No tossing, No silent starring, just quiet breathing. The locket around Alina's neck pulsed gently like a second heartbeat. Alaric stepped onto the balcony without sound. The Northern Court has already sent a raven, he said calmly. They sensed the seal activation. Alina did not turn. And what did they say, she asked. They demand clarification, he replied. They will not tolerate instability. Alina almost laughed softly. Instability? I was scrubbing tables 3 days ago. Alaric's voice lowered. You were never just scrubbing tables. She turned then. You keep saying that. His eyes held hers. Because it is true. Wind lifted her hair slightly. If other courts come, she asked, will they hurt her? Alaric did not hesitate. They will try. Alina felt fear twist in her stomach, but it was different now. Not helpless fear, protective fear. Then I won't leave, she said firmly. Alaric watched her for a long moment. You were offered freedom, he said quietly. You could still take it. Alina shook her head. Freedom without her is not freedom. He looked away briefly, something unreadable crossing his face. Inside the chamber, Lyra stirred. Alina moved quickly back inside. As she lifted the child into her arms, Lyra blinked sleepily. Mama, she whispered. Alina kissed her forehead. I'm here. The word felt natural now, not forced, not stolen. Suddenly the candles flickered violently. The balcony doors slammed shut with a loud bang. Guards shouted somewhere down the corridor. Alina's heart jumped. Alaric was instantly alert, eyes glowing faintly silver. Stay behind me, he ordered. Alina tightened her hold on Lyra. The air thickened unnaturally, heavy like storm clouds pressing indoors. A guard burst through the chamber doors. Your Majesty, he gasped, kneeling, Southern emissaries have breached the outer wards. They demand entry. Alaric's expression hardened. They do not breach, he said calmly. They are allowed. Alina understood. This was not invasion. This was pressure. Minutes later, the throne hall filled again. But this time the atmosphere was different. No formal trial, no ceremony, just calculation. 3 figures entered wearing deep crimson cloaks lined with gold thread. Their eyes were ancient, assessing. They bowed slightly to Alaric, but their gazes flicked immediately to Alina. So one of them said smoothly, this is the human. Alina stood straighter. Lyra remained in her arms. Alaric did not sit on the throne, he stood level with them. She stands under my protection, he said. The tallest emissary smiled faintly. Protection is not immunity. Lyra frowned at the strangers. Bad smell, she muttered softly. One emissary's lip twitched. We have heard, another said, that the oath seal recognized her. His tone carried disbelief layered with irritation. We require verification. Alaric's voice cooled further. The council has verified. The council answers to the realm, the emissary replied. Silence stretched thin. Alina suddenly felt heat pulse through the locket again. Not panic this time. Awareness. Something beyond the chamber stirred. She tightened her hold on Lyra instinctively. The emissaries began circling slowly, observing like predators deciding distance. What exactly is she? One asked casually. I am human, Alina answered firmly. And yet, the emissary said, stepping closer, the seal does not accept human blood so easily. Lyra's hand touched Alina's cheek gently. Warm, she whispered. The emissary stopped mid-step. Alaric noticed the reaction instantly. You will not test her, he warned. The tallest emissary tilted his head. We do not need to. He extended his hand slightly toward Lyra. Before anyone could react, Lyra reached back. Their fingers touched. The emissary gasped sharply as if burned. He stumbled backward. His cloak caught faint violet sparks before dying down. The hall erupted in murmurs. The bond is active, the emissary breathed, staring at his hand. Alina's pulse raced. She had not done anything. Lyra had not meant harm. Alaric stepped forward slightly. You have your proof. The emissaries exchanged uneasy glances. If the bond completes fully, one said carefully, the child will not be bound by council decree. She will be bound by choice, Alaric replied calmly. That is precisely the danger, the tallest emissary said quietly. Elena understood now. It was not about blood purity, it was about control. Lyra suddenly spoke again, louder this time. No cages, she said clearly. The chamber froze again. The emissaries' faces shifted from arrogance to caution. She speaks more each hour, one whispered. The tallest emissary's voice dropped lower. If she awakens fully, she may override ancient obedience rites. Alaric did not deny it. Elena's heart pounded. Override, she asked. The emissary looked at her sharply. For centuries, heirs are guided, directed, balanced. Without such guidance, kingdoms fall. Elena understood the truth beneath the words. Guided meant controlled. Alaric's tone turned final. This audience is finished. The emissaries did not argue, but as they turned to leave, the tallest paused. He looked back at Elena. You are not the threat, he said softly. You are the key. Then they left. The hall emptied slowly. Whispers lingered long after footsteps faded. Elena looked up at Alaric. They're afraid, she said quietly. Yes, he replied. Of me. He shook his head slowly. Of her. Lyra rested her head against Elena's shoulder again, calm as ever. Elena felt something settle inside her, not fear, not confusion. Purpose. She had been unwanted once, invisible once. Now courts feared her presence. The locket pulsed again softly. And somewhere far beyond the palace walls, something older than the council stirred awake. Because when ancient bonds activate, they do not just change a throne. They rewrite the rules. Fear spreads faster than fire, and that night it spread through the palace like smoke under doors. Elena could feel it even without seeing it. Servants avoided her eyes now. Guards bowed deeper but stepped back quicker. No one knew what she was anymore. Not fully human, not vampire, not queen. Something in between. And that uncertainty frightened them more than any monster ever could. Lyra had begun speaking more. Not full conversations yet, but words, clear, intentional. Every time she said "Mama," the air seemed to steady around her. Elena noticed it. So did Alaric. They stood together in the throne hall late that evening. No court, no nobles, just the two of them and a sleeping child resting across Elena's arms. You feel it too, Alaric said quietly. Yes, Elena replied, like something waking up. He nodded once. The oath seal was designed to protect a chosen witness, but it was also designed to restore balance. Elena looked at him carefully. Balance from what? He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. From control, she whispered. Alaric did not deny it. For centuries, the council had shaped heirs, bound them through rituals disguised as guidance, ancient obedience rites hidden inside ceremony. Lyra's silence had been convenient for them. A quiet heir was easier to manage. But now she was speaking, and each word loosened chains they had never admitted existed. A sudden knock interrupted the silence, not loud, not aggressive, controlled. The first advisor entered slowly. He had been beside Alaric for over a century, trusted, loyal, calm in every storm. Elena, he said politely, may I? She stiffened slightly. Alaric watched him carefully. State your purpose. The advisor bowed his head. The council requests one final assurance, a private ritual, no harm intended. Elena felt something twist in her stomach. What kind of ritual? Merely confirmation, he said smoothly, to stabilize the seal. Alaric's voice cooled. The seal is already stable. Your Majesty, the advisor replied gently. With respect, if it destabilizes, other courts will intervene. That was the threat hidden inside diplomacy. Elena looked down at Lyra. Lyra's tiny fingers tightened in her dress. No, the child whispered softly. The advisor's eyes flicked to her. just for a second too long. Alaric noticed. Alina and Lyra will not participate, he said firmly. The advisor bowed again. As you wish, my king. But as he turned to leave, Alina saw something in his posture, not loyalty, calculation. Later that night, Alina could not sleep. Lyra finally rested peacefully, her breathing soft and even. Alina sat beside her bed, fingers brushing through silver hair. "You're safe," she whispered. But she did not believe it fully. A faint sound came from the corridor, too soft for normal ears, but Alina had begun noticing things differently since the seal activated. Footsteps. Measured. Slow. She stood carefully and moved toward the door. Before she could reach it, the handle turned slightly. Locked. But something pressed gently against it from outside. Alina's pulse quickened. Then the window behind her shattered inward. Glass exploded across the room. A shadow figure landed silently. Alina grabbed Lyra instantly, shielding her body. The intruder moved fast, but not fast enough. Before the figure could reach them, a violent force slammed it against the wall. Alaric. His eyes burned silver, not red, rage controlled into precision. The intruder struggled briefly, before Alaric's hand closed around his throat. The mask fell away. Not a foreign assassin. A palace guard. Eliminate the witness, the guard choked weakly, before she completes the bond. Alina's breath caught. Alaric's grip tightened slightly. Who ordered this? The guard's eyes flicked once toward the corridor, toward the advisor's wing. Alaric did not need more. With one swift motion, he rendered the guard unconscious but alive. Alina, he said firmly, you and Lyra move to the inner vault now. She did not argue. As she hurried through hidden corridors beneath the palace, one truth settled inside her chest like stone. The threat was not outside. It was inside. And it had been for years. Inside the council chamber, the first advisor stood calmly before a mirror of black obsidian. His reflection did not match his expression. You are losing control, he murmured to the shadow behind him. A faint voice answered from the darkness. She must not complete the bond. The advisor's eyes narrowed slightly. The king grows sentimental. And sentiment destroys empires. The shadow shifted. Finish it before dawn. Back in the vault chamber, Alina held Lyra close. Lyra looked up at her and spoke clearly for the first time in full sentence. They are scared. Alina swallowed. Of what? Lyra blinked slowly. Of the truth. Upstairs, Alaric stood alone in the throne hall. The betrayal was no longer suspicion. It was confirmed. And he knew exactly who he would confront next. Because if his closest advisor had orchestrated the silence, the obedience rites, and the attempt on Alina's life, then this was never about protecting the throne. It was about controlling it. Alaric turned toward the advisor's wing. His footsteps were calm, but his aura was not. Alaric did not storm into the advisor's chamber. He did not roar. He did not break doors. He walked, slow, controlled. Every guard along the corridor stepped aside without being told. They could feel it. When a king walks like that, someone is about to fall. The chamber doors opened before he touched them. The first advisor stood beside the tall black mirror, hands calmly folded behind his back. No panic, no denial, just quiet patience. I wondered how long it would take, the advisor said softly. Alaric's eyes glowed faint silver. 3 years, he replied. You stood beside me while I buried my queen. The advisor tilted his head slightly. Yes. Silence thickened the air. You muted my daughter, Alaric said. I protected the realm, the advisor corrected calmly. Alaric stepped closer. You bound her voice. The advisor did not flinch. If Lyra had spoken sooner, the oath seal would have awakened sooner, the courts would have fractured, civil war would have begun. So you chose control over truth, Alaric said. The advisor's voice sharpened slightly. I chose stability. Alaric's jaw tightened, and Alina. A variable, the advisor answered smoothly. One that was not supposed to survive long enough to matter. The air turned cold. You attempted to kill her, Alaric said. The advisor gave a small shrug. If she completed the bond, the obedience rights would dissolve. The heir would grow without council influence, without balance. Without chains, Alaric corrected. The advisor's calm cracked for the first time. Without guidance, she could dismantle centuries of order. And perhaps she should, Alaric replied quietly. The advisor studied him carefully. You are thinking like a father, not a king. Alaric's voice lowered. I am both. A faint shift in the shadows near the mirror caught Alaric's attention. You are not alone, he said. The advisor's eyes flicked briefly toward the mirror. From its dark surface, a second figure stepped forward. Ancient, cloaked in deep crimson, not part of the visible council, one of the hidden architects of vampire law. The throne does not belong to emotion, the Crimson Elder said calmly. It belongs to structure. Alaric did not move. You manipulated my grief. The Elder did not deny it. Your queen's death created vulnerability. We stabilized it. You silenced my child, Alaric repeated. For her safety, the Elder replied. Alaric's expression hardened fully now. You silenced her so she could not activate the bond. The Elder's eyes darkened slightly. If the seal completed while you were unstable, your enemies would have moved. And so would you, Alaric said. The Elder did not answer. Alaric understood everything in that silence. You never feared war, he said quietly. You feared losing influence. The advisor stepped forward slightly. Alaric, think carefully. Remove us and the other courts will not accept Alina as witness. They will accuse you of emotional corruption. Alaric's gaze did not waver. They already whisper. And you would risk the realm for one human, the Elder asked coldly. Alaric's reply came without hesitation. I would risk the realm for my daughter's freedom. The chamber trembled faintly as his aura expanded. The Elder's voice lowered dangerously. Then you are no longer predictable. Good, Alaric said. In the inner vault below, Alina felt the shift. A pulse ran through the stone walls. Lyra stirred in her arms. Papa angry, Lyra murmured softly. Alina held her tighter. He's protecting us. Lyra looked at her seriously. No, he's choosing. Upstairs, the advisor's calm finally shattered. If you remove the council's restraint, you invite chaos. Alaric's eyes burned brighter now. Perhaps the realm needs truth more than restraint. The Elder stepped closer. If you strip us of authority, the other kings will gather. Let them, Alaric replied. The advisor realized then, this was no longer about Alina. This was about power shifting permanently. You will not survive a united council, the Elder warned. Alaric's expression turned cold and final. Then they should remember who taught them fear. The chamber doors burst open suddenly. Guards loyal to Alaric flooded in. Not council guards. His personal elite. The advisor's face drained of color for the first time. You planned this, he whispered. Alaric did not deny it. You silenced my daughter, Alaric said slowly. You attempted to erase her mother. You manipulated my throne. He stepped closer. And you mistook my grief for weakness. The Elder began retreating toward the mirror. Alaric moved faster. Silver energy cracked through the air, shattering the obsidian surface. The hidden Elder stumbled backward, cut off from escape. This ends tonight, Alaric declared. The advisor fell to one knee instinctively. Spare the structure, he pleaded quietly. Do not burn what centuries built. Alaric's voice was calm. I am not burning it. He looked toward the shattered mirror. I am rebuilding it. Below, Elena felt the seal pulse again. Stronger. Lyra lifted her head slowly. Crown, she whispered. Above them in the throne chamber, the balance of centuries tipped. Because if Alaric removed the hidden architects tonight, then tomorrow he would have to stand before the full realm and declare the truth. Not just about Elena, not just about Lyra, but about the lie the throne had been built upon. And when kings speak truth publicly, empires shake. Dawn did not rise gently over Nocton Palace. It cracked across the sky like judgment. Word had traveled faster than ravens. By the time the first gray light touched the highest towers, every major court in the realm was watching. Some through mirrors, some through blood-bound seers, some in person, seated in the vast throne hall beneath the silver banners of the Nocton crest. Elena stood at the edge of the hall, Lyra in her arms. She wore no crown, no jewels, just a simple dark gown, but she did not look small anymore. Alaric stood at the center of the chamber. Not on the throne. In front of it. The broken obsidian mirror lay shattered behind him, untouched. The first advisor and the Crimson Elder were restrained but alive, guarded under heavy watch. Not executed, not hidden, exposed. Murmurs rippled across the hall as representatives of distant courts whispered. Alaric raised his hand once. Silence fell instantly. For 3 years, he began, his voice steady and clear, my daughter did not speak. No one moved. She did not speak because her voice was bound. Shock passed across several noble faces. The obedience rights placed upon heirs were hidden from the throne itself, he continued. Sanctioned not for protection, but for control. Gasped whispers unease. The northern emissary stood. These are dangerous accusations. They are truths, Alaric replied calmly. The emissary glanced toward the restrained advisor. Alaric continued, the oath seal awakened not because of manipulation, not because of trickery, but because the rightful witness stood before my daughter. All eyes shifted to Elena. She is human, someone muttered. Yes, Alaric agreed, and chosen. The southern representative rose. Chosen by what authority? Lyra lifted her head from Elena's shoulder. Mine, she said clearly. The hall froze. Every eye locked on the child. Alaric did not interrupt. Lyra wriggled slightly until Elena placed her gently on the marble floor. The small girl walked forward on steady feet. No fear. No hesitation. She stopped directly in front of the gathered court. My voice was locked, Lyra said slowly, because they were scared. Silence thickened like heavy smoke. They wanted me quiet, she continued, so I would listen. The northern emissary swallowed. Lyra looked back at Elena. She didn't listen. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Alaric stepped beside his daughter. Elena is not my queen, he said clearly. Murmurs flickered again. She is not a replacement. The tension shifted. She is the witness the seal chose. The southern emissary shook his head. A human witness cannot anchor royal blood. Lyra lifted her hand. The locket around Elena's neck began to glow softly. The ancient runes carved into the throne pillars flared faintly violet, the same color as the oath seal. The emissary stepped backward instinctively. She already has, Alaric said quietly. The restrained advisor finally spoke from his position. If you allow this bond to complete fully, he warned, you dismantle the obedience structure across every court. Alaric turned slowly toward him. Yes. A collective intake of breath swept the chamber. The Crimson Elder strained against his restraints. Without structure, Alliances collapse. Alaric's gaze sharpened. Then they were weak alliances. The hall trembled faintly, not from power but from truth spoken aloud. Alina stepped forward slightly. "I don't want a throne," she said softly but clearly. "I don't want power, I just want my child safe." A noble scoffed quietly. Lyra turned her silver eyes toward him. "Family," she said firmly. The single word carried more weight than any speech. Alaric looked down at his daughter. Then at Alina. Then at the gathered realm. "For centuries," he declared, "we ruled through silence disguised as guidance. No one interrupted. That ends now." The northern emissary stood rigid. "You risk division." "I risk honesty," Alaric corrected. He moved toward the restrained advisor. "You were loyal to the throne," Alaric said evenly, "but not to truth." The advisor bowed his head slightly. "You will not die for this," Alaric continued. "You will witness it." The Crimson Elder's eyes widened. Alaric turned back to the hall. Effective immediately, obedience rights on heirs are dissolved. Shock rippled violently through the assembly. Witnesses chosen by the seal will stand under royal protection. More whispers. "And any court that attempts to override this decree will answer directly to me." That last line was not loud, but it was absolute. The southern emissary hesitated, then slowly bowed. One by one others followed. Not out of affection, not out of agreement, out of calculation. They saw it. The bond was real. The seal was active. And the air was no longer silent. Alina felt something inside her settle. Not fear. Not doubt. Belonging. Alaric stepped back toward the throne but did not sit. Instead, he lifted Lyra into his arms, then extended his other hand toward Alina. Not as command, as invitation. Alina stepped forward and took it. The hall watched carefully. Not a human servant. Not a replacement queen. Not a threat. A witness. And a mother. Lyra looked out over the court. "Family," she repeated softly. The word echoed differently this time. Not fragile. Not uncertain. Foundational. Outside the palace walls, ravens took flight carrying the decree across the realm. Inside the hall, centuries-old control fractured quietly. Alaric looked at Alina. "I was robbed," he said quietly enough for only her to hear. She met his eyes. "Not anymore." For the first time in 3 years, the throne room did not feel haunted. It felt awake. And in that awakening, something rare had been chosen. Not power. Not fear. But truth. As the court dispersed slowly, whispers now filled with uncertainty rather than dominance, Alaric remained beside Alina. "You were never insignificant," he said quietly. She gave a small, tired smile. "I was just waiting." Lyra rested her head against both of them. No more silence. No more cages. Just a family formed not by ritual, but by choice. And somewhere deep in the ancient magic of the realm, the oath seal glowed softly. Not as a weapon, but as a promise. If you felt that shift, if you believe truth is more powerful than tradition, then you're exactly where you belong. This is Vampire Verse, where crowns are tested, silence breaks, and power never comes without consequence. Drop a like if that one word, mama, changed everything for you. And tell me in the comments, if you were King Alaric, would you choose control or would you choose truth?